Okay. Welcome to one and all. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. It's Hatman Strikes Back, Daily Boxing News. We got some boxing to talk about, but first off, shout out to everyone in the live chat. Let me know if you can hear me loud and clear. Big up Seamus McMichael, early on with a super chat, big up. Shout out to Cash for the super chat. He says, thanks for the entertainment. Always a good day when Hatman turns on the live. Big up Cash every time, my guy. Shout out to MT, Dominic A, Ben Lowe, Lineal Unganu, R, Askip, JR, Joshua Hooker, Sazad, David Mene, Evil Uncle Phil, Herc Gate, Jake Parsons, Kyle, Kieran, Ollie, Nenny Verb, Andy P, Trolls Are Bad, The 286 Project, Mark Hatch, big up, big up. How you guys doing? JR says, you've seen 28 years. Yeah, I've seen it. Going to talk about that on the live stream that I'm going to do later. So this live stream is going to cover the boxing news, and the live stream later is going to be another night flight. And it's going to be a night flight special where I basically review all of the movies that I've seen this year so far, the ones I can remember anyway. And I've seen quite a few. Okay, so to run through them, just to give you a taste of what's going to be on the live stream later, where I talk about movies. It's just going to be a movie live stream where we discuss movies and I do reviews for the movies I've seen this year. So the movies will be The Monkey, Nosferatu, Mickey 17, Final Destination, Bloodlines, The Barbarian, Dangerous Animals, and 28 Years Later. Those are the films I've seen so far this year. And yeah, I'll be giving you my thoughts on those films. 28 Years Later being the most recent one that I've seen. So yeah, lock in for that later on. But for this stream, we're going to get stuck into some boxing news, all right? So without further ado, let's do it. Jarrell Miller did this interview on IFL TV, and he didn't give an explanation or much detail of an explanation as to why he pulled out of the Fabio Wardley fight. He simply said he was injured. He didn't go into it. He didn't elaborate. He didn't produce any evidence. He just said he had an injury. And rather than go through with the fight injured, he thought better safe than sorry. Let me pull out. I'm not satisfied with this explanation from Jarrell Miller at all. Because, yeah, obviously boxing is a contact sport. You pick up injuries. It's inevitable. But given how much smack this guy talks about other fighters, he needs to be producing receipts. Like Dylan White produced receipts when he got injured, when his thumb was cut, or his finger or whatever it was, yeah? Jarrell Miller needs to do the same. A guy as dishonest as he is, who's failed as many PED tests as he has, and like I say, you talk smack about so many other fighters. Now, he needs to be showing us evidence with regards to any injury. Now, if he wasn't injured, and this is just some type of cover story, then my best guess as to what was really going on is that there are still lingering issues with his promoter / former promoter, I'm not sure which, Dimitri Salita, which have been dragging on for years. And in this interview, Jarrell Miller was saying that if you see anyone claiming to represent me, they're a liar. He didn't mention Salita by name, but again, I have to imagine that's who he was talking about. Jarrell Miller is managed by Spencer Brown, and he's been managed by Spencer Brown for quite a while now, at least for his last 2 fights. And yeah, let me know what you guys think of Jarrell Miller's latest interview. And by the way, he did this interview in Saudi Arabia, so maybe he's looking to cozy up to Turki Al-Sheikh even more than he already has tried to, and attempt to get an opportunity. As usual, he was slagging off Deontay Wilder and Anthony Joshua, but also kind of revealing the fact that he was offered the David Adeleye fight. He and David Adeleye are apparently friends, and so he says that he turned that fight down because they're friends. He also spoke about Filip Hrgović. He says he sparred with Hrgović and he likes Hrgović too. He said Hrgović is the homie. And he sees Hrgović Adeleye as a 50-50. I think that's him being diplomatic. Yeah. I think that the vast majority of people, including boxing people, fighters and so on, are going to be favoring Hrgović against Adeleye because of the experience, because of the results, because of the toughness of Filip Hrgović as well. This is a guy who took all the shots from Zhilei Zhang that the likes of Joe Joyce couldn't take, and he went the distance. This is a guy who took all the shots from Daniel Dubois that Anthony Joshua couldn't take. This is a guy who obviously beat Joe Joyce. So, and he gave Daniel Dubois a much better fight than Anthony Joshua did. So yeah, Filip Hrgović, I think in the minds of most people, decorated amateur and whatnot, is firm favorite against Adeleye. Firm favorite against Adeleye. But Jarrell Miller, again, being diplomatic in my opinion. But yeah, let me know what you got. Let me know what you guys think about this in the comments. Godo says, is this mad cheat? Excuse me. It's mad that this cheat is still allowed to fight. Yeah, boxing is a crazy sport, right? JR says, Krasuk and Usyk splitting. Yeah, we'll come on to that. Sinners, thank you. I also saw Sinners. Yes, I did see Sinners. In fact, I need to add that to the list later because I will be reviewing that too. I did a breakdown of Sinners, like a esoteric breakdown, a unpacking of Sinners on Patreon a few weeks ago. For those who haven't heard that. Did I watch Yafai Rodriguez? Only the highlights. Anthony YouTube says John Jones retired from UFC. Yeah, I saw Dana White say that. Kyle says, Miller and Adeleye being friends. I thought Brits are too soft for Miller. Yeah, it's amazing he's still pushing that when he's friends with Adeleye and when Daniel Dubois stopped him. It is what it is. Anyway, let's move on to the next bit of boxing news here. Vidal Riley responds to claims that he is scared to fight Alois Jr. and turned down the fight. Alois called him out following his last win over Jameson. Vidal Riley went on TalkSport and said that, yeah, let's do it next. But then we've got Frank Warren coming out on behalf of Alois saying Vidal Riley turned the fight down. He's not really interested. So Riley in this interview here clarified what's going on. I'm going to paraphrase. He said, look, I'm the British champion. He called me out. He wants an opportunity against me. I said prior to my fight with Chev Clark that I want to be out again in August. And I said it after the fight as well. Okay, I'm paraphrasing Vidal Riley here. So he said that, actually September, he said he wanted to be out again. Excuse me. I said before the Chef Clark fight that I want to be out again in September, and I said it after the fight as well. Okay, this is Vidal Riley. And the offer that he got, or the approach that he got from Frank Warren to fight Alois Jr. was for a fight in August rather than September. I'm the champion. He's calling me out. He needs to give me that concession, basically. Fight me in September rather than August. It seems kind of trivial for this fight to not happen over the date being either in August or September. It's only a month apart, you know? Surely they can get that sorted. Surely that's not too much of a concession for Alois Jr. to make. Why is Vidal Riley insisting on having the fight in September rather than August, though? Is it something to do with the fact that Ben Shalom just lost the Sky deal? Is that what it is? Bear in mind, Vidal Riley is a Ben Shalom fighter currently. Are they looking at maybe getting a Sky? Are they looking at maybe getting a Sky show on in September? Because the rumor is that Sky may be willing to work with Ben Shalom on a show-by-show basis moving forwards, rather than giving him a certain number of dates per year. And so, is that what Vidal Riley's waiting for, to see whether Ben Shalom can get a show on in September? I personally think that Vidal Riley would beat Alois Jr., but that's just an opinion. None of us know until they get in the ring and actually square off. But it's a fight I like. I hope they can get it done. And if it is some type of issue that Vidal Riley has with regards to his promotional situation, I hope that Ben Shalom Boxer can be reasonable with regards to one of their fighters because of the fact that they have come to the end of their Sky contract. Their fighters cannot be denied opportunities. It's unfair. Never mind what is on paper, because there are such a thing as unforeseen circumstances. So, yeah, hopefully this can be resolved and they can get this fight on. But let me know what you guys think about this in the comments. Kyle says Vidal wants to be on the Bud Canelo card. You reckon that's what it is? Could be. Shout out to Jelly Mode. FIFA says Vidal Riley is a fantastic fighter, just isn't my cup of tea in terms of entertainment in the ring. That's a fair comment. Evil Uncle Phil says a show-by-show basis is such a violation, and they'll most likely try to make it pay-per-view, and Boxer don't have pay-per-view fights, or fighters, excuse me. Shout out to Pro Cala. Kyle says, yeah, that's why he keeps talking about September. Okay. So maybe Vidal is looking for a bigger payday and therefore trying to push for a September date to fight whoever, whether it's Alois Jr. or somebody else. Evil Uncle Phil says Vidal is basically the Tom and Jerry fighter Turkey doesn't appreciate, so good luck with that. I'm not so sure about that. Vidal Riley moves a lot, yes, but he punches. You know, if a guy's moving and he's punching a lot, I don't necessarily think Turkey would have an issue with that. I mean, I'm assuming here, but he said what he said off the back of Devin Haney, his last performance, William Skull against Canelo. That's the context in which he made those comments. Do you know what I mean? Low volume movers. It's not just the fact you're moving, it's the fact you're barely throwing any punches. Vidal Riley lets his hands go. He throws combinations against Chev Clark. He was throwing plenty of shots. A lot of people commenting on the Krasov-Usyk situation. We're going to get to that. Hold tight. So let's move on to the next bit of boxing news here. Jamie Shakiva, a.k.a. TKV, has confirmed that he wants to fight Dave Allen next for presumably the vacant British heavyweight title. I'm not sure whether David Adeleye has formally vacated yet. It's assumed he will because he's fighting Filip Hrgović. Eddie Hearn has come out and said that Dave Allen has received a number of offers over the past couple of days to fight major top 10 heavyweight names. Now, this could be a bit hyperbolic from Eddie Hearn in terms of major names. He's a promoter after all. But he says that had these offers not come through, they were looking to just go straight into the Jamie Shakiva fight, which to me seemed the natural fight to make for both men for the vacant British heavyweight title. But let's see what happens with these offers. Is one of them from Deontay Wilder's people? Because there's also talk about Deontay Wilder, if he gets past his next opponent, taking on Anthony Joshua later on this year. I've heard some people say that would be a tune-up for Joshua. I don't see how. Anthony Joshua just got wrecked by Daniel Dubois in his last fight. I mean, AJ was done in worse by Daniel Dubois than Deontay Wilder was done in by Zhilei Zhang. Yes, Anthony Joshua had a moment of success against Deontay Wilder. Yes, Anthony Joshua had a moment of success against Daniel Dubois. But Deontay Wilder had a very brief moment of success himself against Zhilei Zhang. And that's the interesting thing, isn't it? Because both guys got knocked out when they were getting aggressive with their opponent. You guys remember? When Wilder really started going for Zhilei Zhang, that's when he got clipped with a big right hook and then finished off. And Anthony Joshua managed to stagger Daniel Dubois with a right hand. He went for the finish and got chinned himself. So both guys got chinned in similar circumstances. Deontay Wilder, however, got up after being dropped heavily. Anthony Joshua was down for the count. So I don't think you could see this as a tune-up for AJ. I think he's just as washed as Deontay Wilder is, possibly more. I think it's a 50-50 fight, to be honest with you, between two washed fighters. Both guys vulnerable, both guys coming off KO defeats. So we'll see what happens with that one. But this one right here, I don't want to say I hope Dave Allen doesn't get the Wilder fight. Dave Allen is a tough blue-collar fighter. He's made more money than most other fighters of his caliber. But still, with the Johnny Fisher performance, he's put himself in a position to make life-changing money. And I can't begrudge a man doing that when he's earned it, right? So, if he got an opportunity against Deontay Wilder, it's all good. But personally, and maybe this is something that will come back to haunt me, saying this, I'd prefer to see him fight TKV, Jamie Shakiva. Just because I think it's a more competitive fight. Could Dave Allen beat Deontay Wilder? Maybe he could beat him. But if Deontay Wilder is even 60% or 70% of what he was, he should beat Dave Allen pretty comfortably. Dave Allen's very limited. Yeah, the Johnny Fisher fight ended in a brutal knockout, but that's Johnny Fisher. Johnny Fisher is a ranked novice, makes an incredible amount of mistakes, very inexperienced, technically quite poor, and he seemed intimidated going into the Dave Allen rematch. You know, I think he was a bit maybe traumatized or something. I don't know. Maybe that's a bit strong, but he was concerned, I think, after what happened in that first fight with Dave Allen. So, personally, and it is just me guesstimating here, I would think Allen versus TKV would be more competitive. It wouldn't necessarily be more entertaining. TKV showed in the Atalaya fight that while he does have a good jab and a better boxing brain than I had anticipated, he is a bit of a spoiler. And against Dave Allen, that could become ugly and not particularly good to watch. But you never know. Sometimes fights which look like they're going to be a snooze fest or a hug fest going in turn out to be a barn burner. What I will say is I certainly would expect Jamie Shakiva to be far more competitive against Dave Allen than Johnny Fisher was. Without a shadow of a doubt, Jamie Shakiva is a much better boxer than Johnny Fisher. Much, much, much better. Better technique, better jab, slicker. He's just better than Johnny Fisher all round. So, yeah, let me know what you guys think about this one. Andrew Grunbass says, I was told Atalaya is the bookie's favorite against Hrgovic. That doesn't seem right. Okay, let me check that out and see if it's true. Somebody says Hearn is stalling. Now, some people are talking about Dylan White here and how he matches up against the Itauma. Somebody said White will knock Itauma out. Okay, it's not the first time I've seen someone make that prediction. All right, let's move on from this bit of news then. Derek Chisora, in this interview here, has kind of shot down the prospect of fighting Joseph Parker next unless it's for a vacant title of some sort. Chisora is basically being maneuvered by maybe his handlers into a trilogy match with Joseph Parker, but he wants a belt to be on the line, and so he's looking to wait to see the result of the Alexander Usyk-Daniel Dubois rematch. Okay, so that's the first talking point in this Derek Chisora TalkSport interview from the other day. But more interestingly, at least to me, is when he revealed that he was offered £2 million. Actually, he didn't say whether it was pounds or dollars. I'm going to assume it's pounds. £2 million to face Moses Itauma. And he said, hell to the no, no, no. I am not taking that fight. And he kind of was shaking his head at the fact that Dylan White has decided to take the offer that he turned down. Presumably Dylan White is being offered a similar amount of money or has accepted a similar amount of money to what Derek Chisora was offered. And if that is the case, you can completely understand why Dylan White took it. Dylan White has been in the wilderness, folks, for years. Ever since that, in fact, even before the failed Anthony Joshua rematch a couple of years back, he'd been in the wilderness ever since his loss to Tyson Fury. How much do you think he made fighting the likes of Jermaine Franklin? I can't imagine it was much. How much do you think he made fighting the Christian Hammers and Ebenezer Tetes of the world? Dylan White's been starving out here, bro. And depending on how well or how badly he's managed his money, he might be feeling the pinch. So I'm not at all surprised if he was offered, let's say, $2 million like Derek Chisora was offered. I'm not at all surprised that he took it to fight Moses Itauma. The money's too good to turn down for a fighter at the stage of the career that Dillian Whyte is at. So ordinarily, Dillian Whyte, you wouldn't think would take such a fight because he sees himself as an A side and whatnot. And maybe he's getting the lion's share of the money in this one. Who knows? But we all know what this is. This is Frank Warren bringing Dillian Whyte in to be a stepping stone for Moses Itauma. That's what this is. Dillian Whyte is there to be the opponent. He's there to get chinned. I'm not saying he's turning up himself with that intention, but I'm saying that is what Frank Warren has in mind. Put Itauma in there against Dillian Whyte, let him blast Dillian Whyte out in a few rounds, then move on to bigger and better things. He's being used here as the opponent. And that's an unusual position for Dillian Whyte to be in. You could say maybe he was used to get, well, not really used as the opponent against Tyson Fury, because he was mandatory for Fury. But he was certainly the B side against Tyson Fury. Other than that, Dillian Whyte has been the A side going back years and years and years. In fact, I want to say Dillian Whyte has been the A side going all the way back to the Joshua fight, excluding his matchup with Tyson Fury, right? So that's what he's used to. So financially, it's possible that he's the A side against the Itauma, but in terms of the setup, no, he's cannon fodder here. So yeah, completely understand if that's the amount he was offered. $2 million. Derek Chisora was apparently offered to fight Itauma. If Dillian Whyte's been offered the same or is accepted the same, it is what it is. President Brush says, if Dillian Whyte loses, do you think he'll continue to box? I think it depends on the manner of his loss. If he gets obliterated in a couple of rounds, then it may be the end. I'm not sure if Andrew Grimbass is trolling about the odds for Adalai Hrgović. I suspect he is, but we'll look it up anyway. Let's have a look on Odds Checker. All right, they don't have the fight listed on Odds Checker here. That's weird. Let's try another site. All right, so yeah, I guess got some trolling going on here because Hrgović is favorite against Adalai, as you would expect. Mark Odell says Dillian Whyte could stop Moses Itauma. Don't rule it out. In heavyweight boxing, you can't rule anything out. When you're dealing with an experienced fighter like Dillian Whyte, with the power he has, with the experience he has, going in against a very green Moses Itauma, you certainly can't rule anything out. But I would say I'm 75% sure then not only is Itauma going to win, but he's going to stop Dillian Whyte inside 6 rounds. So within the first half of the fight, I'm expecting Dillian Whyte to get stopped. President Brush says, wasn't TKV owed a rematch? Queensbury are doing what they want these days. Well, yeah, rematch was ordered. But if David Adeleye relinquishes the British heavyweight title, then not much can be done, right? Adeleye doesn't have to go through with the fight if he's not British champion. And I did see Frank Warren address the fact that the fight's not happening. He said there was some heel dragging with regards to TKV signing his end of the fight with Adeleye. I don't know how true that is. I don't trust the word of any of these promoters. Obviously, Frank Warren included. They're always spinning stuff. Pro Cala says, I don't see Whyte getting close. His feet are too slow. I agree. So presumably Whyte will be trying to time Moses Itauma on the way in. When Itauma jumps in and throws his shots, Dillian Whyte will be looking to time him with the hook. And at least try and get his jab off. But against the southpaw, it's very hard to land the jab, especially when you're as poorly coordinated as Dillian Whyte. Dillian Whyte is not a very well-coordinated heavyweight. He's nowhere near the athlete that Itauma is. And as somebody said earlier on in the chat, I don't think the angles line up well for Dillian Whyte against the southpaw. Naz says, odds for Whyte Itauma will be interesting. In fact, let me check that. Let's check the Whyte odds. They should be listed by now. Okay, let's have a look on Paddy Power. So Itauma is the favorite. He's 1-12 on. Dillian Whyte is 13-2 against. That's crazy. So there is no doubting who the bookies think is going to win this fight. Yeah, Itauma a huge favorite with the bookies. Huge. So anyone who's confident that Dillian Whyte is going to win, well, you need to be putting some money down then. Because the odds are fantastic here. The odds are literally fantastic. And you might want to get in early. The odds I'm quoting here are from Paddy Power. All right? Dillian Whyte, 13-2 against. So you put 2 down, get 13 back, plus whatever you bet. Shout out to Chili Beef. Kylie says, it sounds crazy given the experience level between them both. There's no way I would bet on Whyte, though, at this stage. And me neither. Graham says, under 6 round KO. That's what I'm going for. Inside 6 rounds. So before the 7th round. Yeah? So first half of the fight, I reckon Itauma gets it done. Dillian Whyte is very fiery, and he will stick his jab out there, and he'll give Itauma a few things to think about. Itauma is a thinking fighter. He doesn't just go in all guns blazing without any thought behind what he's doing. He thinks his way into a fight. Because he's so fast, though, that's why he's getting all these knockouts. Because when he sees an opportunity, he can jump in the pocket extremely quick, hit you. And in fact, in his last fight against Balogun, there were moments when he thought he saw an opportunity. He jumped in, but then Balogun started to throw as Itauma was jumping in, and then Itauma quickly jumped back. He's very, very quick on his feet. So he can, like, turn on a sixpence, to use a football term, right? Football phrase. Itauma can turn on a sixpence in the ring. He can stop dead in his tracks and then move back, move forward, and all that kind of stuff. So he may be doing a bit of that, jumping back and forward against Dillian Whyte in the early rounds when Whyte still has some sharpness in that hook, and when he's trying to get his jab off, and when he's trying to put Itauma in his box a bit with his aggression. But Dillian can only keep that up but for so long, you know? At his age, and he's never been the most athletic fighter in the world. I'm expecting Itauma to catch up with Dillian Whyte. Not catch up in terms of the scorecards, but I'm talking about catch him. Hit him with something clean, hurt him at some point in the first half of the fight. I don't think this fight goes 7 rounds. I don't think we see the bell for the 7th round. Jake says Whyte's a plotter going to get chinned early. I suspect so. First half of the fight. So yeah, there's absolutely no value at all betting on Moses Itauma because he's such a big favorite with the bookies, as it stands right now at least. The odds may shorten up the closer we get to the fight. All the value is with Dillian Whyte. Evil Uncle Phil says 17-2 for Whyte to get the stoppage. Yeah, let's have a look at what else is on Paddy Power here for this particular contest. Let's have a look. Round betting. Moses Itauma in the first round is 11-1. Dillian Whyte to win in the first round is 90-1. Crazy odds, right? Those odds are so crazy. I might put something on that. 90-1. Dillian Whyte winning in the first round. In fact, some later rounds even better. And this is really instructive. Dillian Whyte winning by knockout in any of the rounds from 7 to 12 is 100-1. So Dillian Whyte winning in the 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, 4th, 12th, 100-1 in any of those rounds. Method of victory. Itauma on points is 9-2. Itauma by KO or TKO is 1-4. Draw 14-1. Dillian Whyte on points 16-1. Against, obviously. And yeah, Dillian Whyte, KO, TKO, 17-2. And you can just bet on whether or not the fight will go the distance. 7-2, yes. 1-6, no. Yeah, I can't see it going the distance. Ocean Blue says 90-1. That's worth a tenner. Nathan Glover says, I think in the first couple of rounds, Itauma will be testing the waters to be cautious of not getting caught himself. But after that, I think he will prove to be too fast for Whyte and eventually KO him. That's exactly how I see it. You put it perfectly. Itauma will be testing the waters, feinting, seeing what shots Dillian Whyte throws, looking at Dillian Whyte's feet, looking at Dillian Whyte's body positioning, looking at his hand positioning, downloading data. And then once he sees an area, a chink in Dillian Whyte's armor where he thinks he can throw a fast shot on the outside and connect clean, he's going to go for it. And I think he'll land on target. And that'll be, if not the end, then the beginning of the end for Dillian Whyte. Ocean Blue says, I think Itauma probably stops him within 3. Blue Tiger says, imagine if Whyte comes out southpaw in the first round like he did against Fury. He might. He might attempt to do that, but I don't think it'll end well for him if he does. Shout out to Bob. He says, big up, Hatman. We're going to get fireworks. In any case, Whyte always comes to fight, and Itauma is very explosive. Yeah, we're going to get fireworks, without a shadow of a doubt. Because of Itauma's talent and because of Dillian Whyte's spirit and experience. We're going to get fireworks. Absolutely no doubt in my mind whatsoever that we're going to get fireworks in this fight. No matter who wins. I'm strongly expecting Itauma to win. But, yes, fireworks either way. Godo says Whyte might chin check him. Yes, possible. We'll see. All right, so let's move on to the final bit of news we've got to talk about here. And that is Alex Krasuk putting this post up on Instagram. The post seems to suggest that he and Usyk have split. Alex Krasuk is Alexander Usyk's longtime promoter. So you can see, it says, it's been a tremendous journey. 12 years of unbelievable success. 2 young dreamers met each other to change the game. Back in 2013, I gave you my word and kept it. At the time, no one believed we were capable of achieving what we set out to do. But by the grace of God, we completed the mission impossible. Milestones we conquered together. September 2016, WBO Cruiserweight Champion. January 2018, WBO and WBC Cruiserweight Champion. July 2018, Undisputed Cruiserweight Champion. September 21st, September 2021, WBO, WBA, and IBF Heavyweight Champion. May 2024, Undisputed Heavyweight Champion. A dream come true. Thank you for all we've gone through and for the honor to be the lifetime promoter of the Double Undisputed. May the Lord bless you and guide your next steps. Thank God for everything. All right, so he doesn't explicitly say that he and Usyk have gone their separate ways, but it's very much implied in this post. And this is a curious thing, if indeed they have split, because of the timing of it. And it's drawn some very concerned comments from Alexander Usyk fans. Now, one comment, which you can see on screen here, has this individual saying, Usyk didn't renew his contract with K2 Promotions. Alex Krasuk responded by saying, we did have any, I guess he meant to say we didn't both have any, since 2022. And he's got this like smiling emoji. Make of it what you will. Has there really been a split between Usyk and Krasuk? Is it mind games in response to the attempted mind games from Team Dubois? Or is all not well in Team Usyk? Has Usyk ended up doing something similar to what Gennady Golovkin did in the latter stages of his career when he refused to give Abel Sanchez, his trainer, a percentage moving forward and instead offered him a flat fee? Now, I don't know what the law is in Usyk's country, and Krasuk comes from the same country with regards to promotional contracts, but certainly in the UK and in the US, promoters get a standard cut. There are instances when a different cut can be negotiated, sometimes a lower fee for a longer contract. But again, Krasuk is saying that he and Usyk haven't had a contract since 2022. So I guess it's all been on a handshake and a word and all this type of stuff. And that obviously leaves the door open for disagreements if there's nothing on paper. And Krasuk doesn't like the cut he's getting for the Dubois fight. Maybe he can say, look, I'm bouncing. Perhaps we will find out in due course. But things like this tend not to bode well going into a fight when you're splitting up with a promoter or splitting up with a trainer. It shows disarray. It shows a change of energy. But then again, Usyk is such a road warrior. Let's be real. He's been fighting in people's backyards for so many years. He's used to change, you would have thought. But although things are changing around Usyk throughout his career, his team has remained the same, other than his trainer, because he was with Lomachenko's. Well, early on in his career, he was with James Ali Bashir. Then he was with Lomachenko's dad. Then he was with his amateur coach. And I think he's stayed with his amateur coach since. But Krasuk and Klimas have been with him for years and years and years. Pretty much since the start. And so psychologically, that might be Usyk's comfort zone. Do you know what I mean? He hasn't had a comfort zone in terms of where he fights, but he may have had a comfort zone in terms of his team. And so if Krasuk has parted ways for whatever reason, will that affect Alexander Usyk negatively going into this Daniel Dubois fight? If he goes in there and dispatches of Dubois with minimal issue, then all of this will be forgotten. And sometimes, or perhaps we are all guilty, or many of us guilty, of talking about stuff like this before a fight and then forgetting it ever happened when the guy goes in there and does the business same way. Do you know what I mean? We only tend to remember things like this when the result goes badly. Then we look back and say, you see, there was turmoil in his camp. He split up with his promoter right before. So, time will tell. But let me know what you guys think about this in the comments. Shout out to GMS Nightmare. He says, how does Fury Itauma go? Right now, I'd have to pick Fury. But Itauma is improving very fast. Fury is inactive at the moment, so we don't know what it would look like if he came back. It won't be long, let's just put it that way, before I'll be picking Itauma over Fury. But right now, I'd probably go with Fury. AJ says Usyk wants that final $100 million payday to himself, and I don't blame him. But is he getting that kind of payday for this fight? You know, Daniel Dubois is not Tyson Fury or Anthony Joshua in terms of commercial value. I know Turkey Al-Sheikh is involved in everything, but I don't know what Usyk is actually getting here. Taylor says Usyk don't want to pay him his 5%. Maybe. Shout to Zach Christ. He says, run up the likes, you guys. Yes, if everyone can stick a like on this stream, it will be much appreciated. Only takes a split second. And it really helps with the visibility of these streams. So if everyone can stick a like on this stream, thank you in advance. But how do you see Fury Itauma going, GMS Nightmare? What do you think? Triple R says, Evil Uncle Phil says, I can't believe Usyk versus Dubois is even pay-per-view. To be honest, it feels weird. Shout out to Anthony YouTube. Taylor says Dubois is 3-1 against Usyk. I reckon that's about right. Maybe slightly closer in my mind. 4-2 maybe. Or 3-2, excuse me. No. Here's me messing up my mathematics. I'm giving Daniel Dubois about a 40% chance, whatever that is in betting odds. Graham says I'm going for a Daniel KO. All right. She'll get decent odds on that. Good comment by Ocean Blue says, I think Usyk's decline has masked the extent of Partridge's decline. That's a very good comment. And Shola says, I'm going to buck the trend and go with a shock Dubois 8th round TKO. When a fighter reaches the age that Usyk is at, 38, long career, plenty of wear and tear in training camps and fights, going up against the young guy, you can, quote unquote, get old overnight. It happens. So it wouldn't be, to me, like the shock of the century for Daniel Dubois to win. Again, I give him a 40% chance. That's a fairly high possibility of victory, right? I give him a 40% chance against Usyk. Graham says Dillon versus Chisora was pay-per-view. It was, but that's when both guys were in their primes. But I don't have an issue necessarily with Usyk Dubois being on pay-per-view. It's undisputed. What should not be pay-per-view is Itauma versus Dillian Whyte. There's no way that should be pay-per-view. Yeah, I agree with Graham. He says Usyk Dubois is the first undisputed on British soil in the four-belt era. Yeah, I've got no issue with it being pay-per-view. Albie says, I cannot believe Berlanga versus Shiraz is pay-per-view. That's a shocker. That's another example of DAZN taking the absolute biscuit. How is Berlanga Shiraz a pay-per-view? Ridiculous. All right. I'm going to draw the curtain on this live stream. I will be streaming later on. It will be a night flight show. So watch out for that because I'll schedule it and I'll give you the exact time. Right? You'll see it come up in your YouTube feed, the exact time this evening. It won't be too late. Certainly no later than, let's say, 9. If it is, I'll tell you. You should have the exact time fairly soon. And that'll be a night flight show where I talk about movies. Because I've watched a whole heap of movies so far this year, new releases, including 28 Years Later. And I'll be giving you my thoughts on all these movies, including 28 Years Later, doing reviews for all of them. And we can get into a movie discussion after that. All right? So make sure you check back in for the night flight. Until then, take care, be safe, and I'll catch you guys on the other side. Peace.